Welcome back. Tonight's story is about a man who felt a lie the second he heard it, smiled through 11 months of fake grief, and then watched a sealed envelope from his wife's OB-GYN slide across a mediator's table at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning. Pour the coffee. Stay close. My wife faked a miscarriage to keep me from filing for divorce, so I let her own doctor's records do the talking instead of me. My name is Daniel Whitaker. I am 44 years old. I fly heavy metal for a regional cargo line out of Tucson. 3 nights on, 4 nights off. The kind of schedule that teaches you to listen for things that do not match. The phone call that started all of this came in on a Wednesday in June. I was eating a gas station sandwich in the crew lounge in Albuquerque when my wife, Renata, called me from our kitchen and told me, in a voice that was already too steady, that she had lost the baby. She said the words clean. No catch. No breath. Just the sentence. Then a pause where the catch should have been. I looked out at the heat ripples coming off the tarmac and I knew, somewhere under my ribs, that I had just been handed a script. I told her I loved her. I told her I was coming home. And I started counting very quietly the small things that did not line up. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from tonight. I want to know who is with me on this one. We had been married 9 years by then. Renata was 36. Dark hair she kept long because I had once said I liked it. A closet full of soft cardigans and one expensive coat she only wore to her mother's house. She worked in pharmaceutical sales out of a small office on Speedway Boulevard, the kind of job that came with a leased SUV and a $1,000 laptop bag. Our house in the foothills had a tile roof, a backyard with a low adobe wall, and a kitchen window that looked straight at the Catalinas. From the outside, we were the couple at the neighborhood barbecue who left at a reasonable hour and brought a decent bottle of wine. From the inside, the rot had its own smell. The first warning had come on our 2nd anniversary. I had cooked badly. She had laughed in a way that did not sound like laughing and said, in front of her sister Camille, that she had married a man who could land a jet in fog but could not boil pasta. Camille had laughed too. Renata had used the word grit. She loved that word. Grit. Resilience. Real world. She used those words the way other women use perfume, a little spray of them on anything that might otherwise smell like cruelty. The second warning came 4 years in. I came home from a 6-day rotation and found a small dog crate by the back door, and inside it a thin brown puppy with one ear taped down. Renata told me she was fostering. She told me his name was Bishop. She told me he would only be with us a week. He stayed 11 days. On the 12th morning, I woke up and the crate was empty and there was a coffee cup steaming on the counter, and Renata was scrolling her phone with one bare foot tucked under her. She told me, without looking up, that Bishop had not been a good fit for our lifestyle. She told me she had returned him. She used the word discipline. I did not say anything that morning. But I started, that day, to listen to her the way you listen to a radio that has a hum underneath the music. I started to hear the hum. The triggering thing was small. It almost always is. In late May, Renata went quiet for 4 days. Not cold. Quiet. She made dinner. She kissed my cheek. She did not pick fights, which was the tell, because picking fights was her cardio. On the 5th morning, she sat down at the kitchen island with a mug of decaf she had never once ordered before, and told me, in a voice she had practiced, that she was pregnant. 8 weeks. She had taken 3 tests. She had not wanted to tell me until she was sure. She watched my face the way a card player watches a turn. I felt my own face do what she wanted it to do. I hugged her. I told her this was a gift, and in the half-second before my arms closed around her, I saw, on the counter behind her, a printed itinerary for a weekend in Sedona with a name on it that was not mine. She folded it into her sleeve so smoothly I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. I did not imagine it. I just filed it. 2 weeks later, on the Wednesday in Albuquerque, she called and told me she had lost the baby. I came home that night, and the house was lit like a vigil. 3 candles on the island. A throw blanket on the couch arranged the way a stylist arranges a couch. Renata was on it in a long gray cardigan, her hair in a low knot, her eyes red around the edges in a way that looked almost rehearsed. Her mother, Beverly, was already there, holding a casserole dish with a tea towel under it, the way women in that family hold a prop. Camille was in the kitchen pouring wine. They had moved fast. They had moved like a unit. I sat down next to my wife and I held her hand and I felt, under my thumb, that her pulse was slow and even. A woman who has bled out a pregnancy that morning does not have a resting heart rate of 62. I am not a doctor. I am a pilot. I know what bodies do under stress. Her body was not under stress. Her body was on stage. She cried the right amount. She said the right things. She said she did not want to talk about it yet. She said she just needed me close. And then, in the middle of the most careful sentence of the night, she said the line that turned a bad week into a folder. She said, "I cannot do paperwork right now, Daniel. Not for months. Please. Just let us be a family while we grieve." Beverly nodded once, hard, from the doorway. Camille looked at the floor. Renata looked at me. And I understood. The way you understand turbulence the second the cup starts to slide. That she had known I was about to file. She had known for weeks. The pregnancy had not been announced for me. The miscarriage had not been performed for me. Both had been staged for a judge who did not exist yet. I did not say a word that night. I held her. I cried, a little, for the version of my life I had already buried. And in the dark, while she slept the practiced sleep of a woman who had pulled it off, I lay on my back and stared at the ceiling fan and made one decision. I would not confront her. I would not yell. I would not even ask. I would let the truth come for her on letterhead. The next morning I called a man named Arturo Salas, an attorney a captain I trusted had used the year before, and I told him I needed to file for divorce in 11 months, not 11 days. He asked me why. I told him my wife had just told the world she had lost a child I did not believe had ever existed. There was a long silence on the line. Then Arturo said very quietly, "Daniel, if that is true, we do not run at it. We let it walk into the room on its own legs." I told him to start the file. I told him to keep it cold. And I went back inside my house and I poured my wife a cup of coffee with 2 sugars, the way she liked it. And I kissed the top of her head. And I began the 11 longest months of my life. I want to pause here for a second. If you have ever sat across a table from someone you loved and realized, in real time, that they were lying about something you would never have lied about, drop a 1 in the comments. I want to know I am not the only one who has felt that floor tilt. The months that followed were the strangest performance of my career. I flew my rotations. I came home. I asked Renata how she was healing. She told me she was seeing a therapist named Lauren whose name never showed up on any insurance statement I could find. I rubbed her back when she said she could not face our friends yet. I went to a memorial brunch her mother organized at a country club north of town, where Beverly toasted our angel with a mimosa, and Camille squeezed my forearm with the exact pressure of a woman who knew the script and resented being in it. I smiled at every aunt. I shook every hand. And every night after Renata fell asleep, I went into the small guest room I had turned into a study, and I opened a plain manila folder, and I added one more item. A bank statement showing a $400 charge at a spa in Sedona on the weekend Renata had told me she was at a sales conference in Phoenix. A receipt from a restaurant in Scottsdale, 2 entrees, 1 bottle of wine. On a Tuesday night, I had been told she was in bed with cramps. A text screenshot accidental from her phone left on the counter, from a contact saved as Dr. M follow-up, that read, "Thursday works, same room." A photograph taken by my own neighbor without knowing what she was photographing, of Renata getting into a silver sedan in our driveway at 11:40 on a weekday morning. I did not chase any of it. I did not hire anyone. I just kept the folder. Arturo had been clear. We were not building a war. We were building a record. The single piece I did not have, the one I needed, was her medical chart. Arturo had explained it to me the first week. In Arizona, in a contested divorce with allegations of fraud and financial misrepresentation, An attorney can subpoena medical records through standard discovery once the petition is filed. We could not go fishing before then. We had to wait. We had to let her keep performing until the day the paperwork hit, and then her own doctor's office would, by law, hand over the chart. He told me, "Daniel, if there was no pregnancy, the chart will say so. If there was a pregnancy and a loss, the chart will say that too. Either way, you stop guessing." I told him I could wait. I had been guessing since the second anniversary. 11 months was nothing. By the following April, Renata had begun to relax. That was the thing that almost broke me. She started talking about a second try. She bought a book about cycle tracking and left it on the nightstand where I could see it. She told her mother on speakerphone in the kitchen that we were in such a good place. Beverly said, "He is finally being a man about it." Camille said nothing. Camille had begun by then to avoid my eyes. I think Camille was the only one in that family who had a small piece of conscience left, and I think it was eating her alive. I filed on a Monday in May. Arturo walked the petition into the Pima County Courthouse himself. Renata was served at our front door at 4:18 in the afternoon by a polite man in a short-sleeved shirt. I was in the kitchen browning onions. I heard the doorbell. I heard her open it. I heard her say, "I'm sorry, what is this? What is, And I heard for the first time in 11 months a crack in her voice that was not rehearsed. She walked into the kitchen with the papers shaking in her hand, and she looked at me and she said, "Daniel, what did you do?" I turned off the burner. I told her, very gently, that I had filed for divorce. I told her my attorney would be in touch with hers. I told her I had already moved a suitcase to a hotel near the airport, and I would be staying there until mediation. She tried to cry. The tears came on a half-second delay, the way bad CGI lags behind the action. I picked up my keys. I left her standing in our kitchen with the onions still smoking in the pan. Mediation was set for a Tuesday morning in early August at a one-story office on Broadway. Arturo had filed the subpoena for Renata's medical records 6 weeks earlier. Her OB-GYN, a Dr. Marisol Hernandez out of a women's health practice off Grant Road, had sent her chart under seal directly to the mediator. Renata's attorney, a sharp woman named Priscilla Doan, had not, I would later learn, been told about the medical subpoena until the morning of. Renata had not told Priscilla there was anything to find. We sat down at 9. Renata in a navy dress, hair down, the soft cardigan back in rotation. Beverly was in the lobby like a chaperone. The mediator, a calm man in his 60s named Howard Pratt, opened a thin stack of folders in front of him. At 9:14, he picked up a sealed manila envelope from the top of the stack. He slit it with a letter opener. He read for about 40 seconds. He looked up at Renata. He looked at Priscilla. He looked at me. And he said, in the most even voice I have ever heard a human being use, "Counsel, there is information in this chart that materially affects the representations in your client's response. We need to address it now. If you have stayed with me this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments which moment in this story is sitting on your chest right now." I read everyone. Priscilla asked to see the chart. Howard slid it across. Priscilla read. Priscilla's face did the thing a face does when a lawyer realizes her client has been lying to her. Renata reached for the page. Priscilla, without looking at her, moved it half an inch out of reach. Then Priscilla asked for a recess. Howard said, "Of course." He looked at me, and he said, "Mr. Whitaker, would you like to wait in the side room?" I said, "No, sir. I'd like to stay." Renata's chart, in Dr. Hernandez's own handwriting and printed letterhead, showed 3 things. 1. There had never been a positive pregnancy test in that office. Not in May, not ever. 2. Renata had come in alone on the Monday before her phone call to me in Albuquerque, and had requested a letter on practice letterhead confirming early pregnancy loss for what she described to the front desk on a recorded intake line as a family matter. Dr. Hernandez had refused. Dr. Hernandez had documented the refusal in the chart. 3. There was a separate billing entry 8 months earlier, from a procedure that was not a miscarriage. It was an elective procedure Renata had scheduled without telling me, the kind that quietly ends the possibility of the very pregnancy she had later claimed to lose. The chart said it in clinical, unblinking language. The mediator did not have to say a word. The page said it. Renata started to cry, finally, for real. The sound was nothing like the rehearsed sound from June. This one came from somewhere lower. Priscilla closed the folder. Priscilla said, "Howard, I am going to need to speak with my client outside." They left. The door closed. Howard looked at me across the table and he said, "Mr. Whitaker, your attorney indicated this might be the case. I am sorry." I said, "Thank you, sir." I did not feel triumphant. I felt the way you feel after a hard landing in crosswind. Hands a little cold, ears ringing, alive. When Renata came back in 20 minutes later, her face had been washed. Priscilla sat down with the careful posture of a lawyer who has just renegotiated her own settlement position in a hallway. Arturo slid one sheet across the table. It was our revised proposal. Given the fraud, given the documented misrepresentation made specifically to forestall divorce proceedings, we were no longer offering the generous split we had walked in with. We were offering the legal minimum. Priscilla read it. Priscilla looked at Renata. Renata looked at me. And I said the one thing I had practiced in the dark for 11 months. I said it quiet. I said it without heat. I looked at my wife across that small table in that beige office on Broadway and I said, "You told me in our kitchen that you could not do paperwork right now, so I did it for you." It was a callback she felt in her teeth. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Beverly's word, the one Renata had inherited and used on me for 9 years, sat in the air between us. Grit. I had finally shown her some. She signed. Not all of it that day, but enough. Enough to end the performance. If this story has reached somewhere quiet in you, hit the like button softly. No big speech. Just a small thank you between us. I drove home that afternoon, except the home was a one-bedroom rental near Reed Park with a borrowed couch and a window that faced east. I made coffee in a new pot. I sat on the small balcony in the August heat, and I talked out loud, to the version of myself who had sat in that Albuquerque crew lounge 14 months earlier with a gas station sandwich and a slow, sick feeling under his ribs. I told him he had been right to listen. I told him that the hum under the music had been real. I told him that loving someone is not the same as believing them, and that a man who flies for a living should never, ever ignore an instrument that is telling him the truth. I told him the folder he started that night had not been revenge. It had been a flight log, a record of what was actually happening, written down so that one day a calm man named Howard Pratt could slit it open at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning and let the truth land itself. Being lied to by someone you loved is not the same as being unlovable. Being slow to act is not the same as being weak. Sometimes the quietest thing in the room is the strongest. Sometimes the loudest revenge is a manila envelope, sealed, mailed by a doctor who simply told the truth, and opened by a stranger who had no reason to protect anyone in the room. I am still flying. I still listen for the hum.